Alright, welcome to the third edition of Main Event Wrestling. I'm your host, Mr. Main Event Wrestling, and today we're going to talk about the goings-on in the wrestling business the past week or so. And let's start off with probably the biggest thing to happen in wrestling the past week, and that is on Thursday, I think. 9 WWE superstars have been released. I'm just going to go down the list and say my thoughts on them. Drew McIntyre. Talked about him last week. I think he's a great talent. I think he was being misused. I think that he should have been a lot more than he was, but since he was what he was, they were probably paying him too much to keep on just being a comedy jobber, and I think that it's good for him, for his career, to go and not be with WWE anymore because he can find success somewhere else and maybe get a second chance, hopefully, in WWE. And then Jinder Mahal, again, paid too much probably for what he was doing. Oksana, divas are expendable at this point in time. Except for the top of them, yeah, divas are expendable. I'm surprised there wasn't more divas on the list. Kurt Hawkins, haven't really heard from him since he was tagging with Zack Ryder, and that was back in 2008. Teddy Long. Teddy Long's been there for so long. He's done everything as a non-wrestling talent you really could, except be a commentator. But I don't think that he'd be fitting for that role. And he's been a GM for the better part of a decade. So they really had nothing else to do with him. And from what I've heard, he wasn't released. His contract just ran out. And then we have Camacho, who's been getting a small little push in NXT, but not really. But he was on TV quite frequently, so that's kind of a little surprise. Brodus Clay, they didn't have anything to do for him after he turned heel. And I really don't think they had anything planned for his heel turn from the beginning. Evan Bourne, he hasn't wrestled for 2 years. If you haven't wrestled there for 2 years, they've got nothing for you, and he's better off not being there. Yoshitatsu, I don't even remember the last time I saw Yoshitatsu on Raw or SmackDown. And that's it for the releases. TNA had a pay-per-view. From what I've heard, it was a decent show. Put over a couple of young talents. EC3 beat Bully Ray in a Texas death match. What else? Magnus beat Jeff Hardy. And Von Erichs, Kevin's sons, made their debut. And it was in Dallas, so great place to debut them. Good thinking on TNA's part for once. And they have them win by DQ. They don't have them go over clean. They don't have them get a pin or a submission. They have them lose or win by DQ in the city and the state that loves the Von Erichs, who watch the Von Erichs and the Freebirds clash every night. I just don't get it. I don't get TNA's thinking sometimes. And that transitions into the quote-unquote TNA Hall of Fame. announcement. They announced the Dudleys, which, again, does not make sense to me. They have nothing of their greatest matches. That was all under TNA and ECW, or WWE and ECW banners, excuse me. They can't even call them what they're best known by. They're the Dudleys. But they can only call them Team 3D. They can't put out a DVD promoting to go along with the Hall of Fame for the Dudleys. They can't. They don't own anything of significance with them. The WWE puts out a DVD on the Dudleys, it will be one of the greatest tag team compilations you could have. You put in their best matches from ECW and WWE, and you have a great set of matches. And you put the documentary in there with people like Dreamer and Heyman and Spike and RVD and all the people that were there and lived and saw the Dudleys rise in ECW, their transition to WWE. TNA can't do that. The only reason they're doing this, the only reason they created it, is to take WWE guys, or WWE guys who made their biggest impact in WWE, and induct them before WWE camp. People like Sting, who, yeah, he wasn't in WWE, but he was in WCW, and WWE owns all the footage to WCW. Kurt Angle. You can't tell me Kurt Angle's had done anything even close to the work he did in WWE. And Kurt Angle's done good work in TNA. But you can't tell me he's done anything close to the work he did with Shawn, or with Brock, or with Taker, or with Rock, or Triple H, or Austin, or any of the guys that he worked with while on top of his game in WWE. They're just doing it to beat WWE to it because that's all they care about, is one-upping WWE and trying to be better than WWE when they should know better, because they can't, because they aren't better than WWE, and the reason they aren't better than WWE is because they're trying to. And they're trying to do it by being WWE, and you can't do that. It infuriates me to see a company just so obsessed with someone 10,000 times better than them. That would be like a mom and pop store talking about how they're better than Walmart or better than Target. You're not. That's not what you do. Don't try and be something you're not. Try and be the best at what you are. And TNA just doesn't get that. And then we have possible 2015 Hall of Fame names for WWE, the real Hall of Fame. You have Rock, Randy Savage, Kevin Nash, Rikishi, and either Victoria or Mickie James. And those are just possibilities, rumors, nothing even close to confirmed. But if that's the class, that's a great class. Because The Rock is one of the greatest WWE superstars of all time. Randy Savage is my personal favorite performer of all time. Kevin Nash, good big man, had the title for, if not a year, if not over a year, then close to a year. As Diesel. Rikishi was one of the most entertaining parts of the Attitude Era with him and Too Cool. And either Victoria or Mickie James, great women's wrestlers, who both held the women's title multiple times. And they were actually wrestlers and not just divas. And my favorite out of that is Randy Savage. Randy Savage is my all-time favorite performer in professional wrestling. I mean, he had the promo skills, he had the in-ring skills, he had the look, he had the flair and the pomp and circumstance, and yes, pomp and circumstance was the best choice for him as a theme. And he just had everything. He had mainstream recognition, because even if you didn't watch WWF or WCW, you knew who Randy Savage was. Ooh yeah, snap into a Slim Jim, dig it! Everyone saw those commercials. Everyone knew that voice. Everyone knew who Randy Savage was. Everyone knew the Macho Man. And he wasn't all just, ooh yeah, dig it! Tower of power too sweet to be sour. No, he could get it done in the ring. Him and Ricky Steamboat had, for my money, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time and the greatest wrestling match of all time. The only one, in my opinion, that even approaches it is Ricky Steamboat Ric Flair from Chicago in 1989 when Ricky beat Flair for the title. But I will always, always put Steamboat Savage above that for the stage it was on, for the event it was on, for the impact it had on the business. And that's not taking anything away from Flair and Steamboat. That was a great match too. But I just think because it was at WrestleMania 3, and just the magnitude of that event, with 90,000 people in the Silverdome to see Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and everyone in that place getting blown away by Steamboat and Savage for the Intercontinental title. And Savage was always great. I mean, even in WCW he did good work when he was with the NWO, and his feud with Diamond Dallas Page, which is vastly underrated to me. I mean, they had on pay-per-view 3 brutally hard-hitting matches that made DDP into a legit star in the business. And to have him in the Hall of Fame would be to legitimize the Hall of Fame. And a big reason that it's being rumored that he's going to go in is because they're doing a big DVD/Blu-ray for him. That they're going to actually have a documentary, and his brother, Laney, aka The Genius, is going to be participating, which that's a big deal because Laney has not been on the best of terms with WWE for the past few years. And I would love to see people like Hogan and Steamboat and Flair and Piper and Duggan and all the people who were there in the 80s with him, and even in the 90s in WCW. I have Paige go on there and talk about how Savage legitimized him pretty much, or helped legitimize him. And just have them all talk about who he was and his career and the impact that his career had, because I think Randy Savage's career is vastly overlooked in terms of significance. Because from the mid to early 80s to the late 90s, or till he left the NWO. He had good matches and was a big time player in both WWF and WCW. And I would love to see him in the Hall of Fame. He's, I think, one of the last names that needs to be in there. There are a few, but that's another discussion. Let's get to Raw. Raw ended about an hour ago, and it was a decent show. It's better than it's been recently. Rollins and Ziggler was good. Ambrose and Barrett was all right for how kind of short it went. Wyatt and Sheamus had a good brawl. What else? I think the segments with Reigns and Vicky, and then Vicky and the Authority, were kind of stupid with the whole puking thing, but that got Reigns into a battle royal to determine one of the last two spots for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship Money in the Bank match. And Reigns won the battle royal, as I expected he would after he got put in. And then Cena qualified over Kane in a stretcher match, a decent stretcher match. I would have rather seen Kane win because I don't like the prospect of Cena winning the title. I don't have anything against Cena. I'm a Cena defender. I don't think he's the worst thing ever, as I've said before. But I don't think he should be winning the title, at least right now. And him getting into the match is kind of making me nervous that he might. But I'll get to who I think is going to win that later. Not even going to talk about Kevin Hart. He was in a tiny little mid-card segment. I mean, I like Kevin Hart. He's a funny guy, but I don't think we really need to discuss that. That was it for Raw. Raw had a couple, 2-3 good matches, mostly in the first hour. The hours 2 and 3 were kind of boring. Another match was added to Money in the Bank. It's the Usos defending their titles against Rowan and Harper, which right now I'm going to predict that Rowan and Harper are going to win the titles. There was not a second Money in the Bank match announced. I hope there is, because it's going to be fucking depressing not to see someone carrying around the briefcase, because since 2005, there's been a briefcase for a title shot, and someone has cashed in and either made a big moment or done something with that title. I mean, except for Sandow and Cena's cash in, they've all become champion. But who knows? Hopefully they do, but if they don't, hopefully they find another way to take someone who's maybe in the mid-card on the cusp and elevate him up. Someone maybe like a Barrett or give Ziggler another chance, or give Miz another chance. Just someone who they know could do it, but they need to give him a platform to do it. And so far, only 2 matches have been announced for Money in the Bank, which is kind of weird. There's the Money in the Bank ladder match, or the title Money in the Bank ladder match, who the participants are Cena, Sheamus, Cesaro, Orton, Reigns, and Wyatt. And I'm going to predict right now that, God, I don't know. I read that it's supposed to be a heel, and there are 3 heels in the match only. It's half heels, half face. And the 3 heels are Wyatt, Cesaro, and Orton. And I think if they're going to give the title back to Bryan, they're going to give it to Orton. If they're not, and they want to give the guy who they're giving it to a long run with the title, have it be Wyatt. Or I think any of the 3 heels you can make a case for them winning it. Cesaro, there's a built-in program for Lesnar to come in and feud with Cesaro for the title. I mean, they're both Paul Heyman guys. Have Heyman conflicted over who he chooses, his champion or his beast. I think that would be really good. I think it would make for really good TV. And I think Heyman would knock promos in that program out of the building. And Heyman would just be the sleazy, sly, trying to support them both, but they're not seeing that they're talking down, that he's talking down to the other guy, to him. Like, he's talking down Brock when he's with Cesaro, and he's talking down Cesaro when he's with Brock. And I think that would just make for really good TV. You wouldn't know where he was going, and it would be like, so who's he going to screw over? Who's he going to side with? And that would be a really good program. That would be a really good program to elevate Cesaro to main event level, to a star. And it would be a really cool program. And I think they would have really, really good matches. I'd love to see if Cesaro could throw Lesnar up in the air like he does for his uppercut, which I think that should be his finisher, not the neutralizer. I think the uppercut should be his finisher. That thing looks like it could break your damn neck. And that's about it. Don't forget, like, subscribe, comment with your questions, inbox me with your questions. Like I've said, I will answer any and all of them on my next show if I get any, and I haven't been. But please give me your questions. I like answering questions. It'll give me more to talk about. Maybe do a video just for questions. And that's about it. Until next week, I will see you later.